Oops. Hello, this is Keith Peterson, the Trimble eCognition Product Manager, talking to you today about the topic of eCognition for license administrators. Granted, it's not the most exciting webinar topic we've had so far, but it is very important, and I'm really glad to have some of our support engineers with me live on the line today to discuss all the ins and outs of eCognition licensing. Why is it so important? Because it's the first step you have to take in order to use your eCognition software. So stay tuned, and we're going to get right into the agenda of this webinar. Before we really get moving, I want to point out that everybody's on mute. That's for a reason. Don't worry if you see the mute button. If you have questions during the webinar, please use the question dialog that you see in the setup. You can submit that question, and our support engineers are here live today, and we'll be answering these questions as we go along, and we'll also have a nice wrap-up of Q&A at the end of the webinar session. Also, if things are moving fast and you miss something, don't worry about it. The webinar is being recorded, and it will be available in the Trimble Geospatial Webinar Archive maybe 1 or 2 days after this live session. So that being said, use the question field if you want to ask us a question. And remember, the webinar will be recorded, so if you miss something, you can always watch it over and over again via our Trimble Geospatial Webinar website. So what are we going to discuss today? We have a good agenda. First of all, how do I get an eCognition license? Then the entitlement ID, that cryptic email with all these numbers, we'll explain that for you. And then we'll look at license server installation. And then how to manage the licenses once everything's up and running and installed. You can activate, return, and borrow, all those nice tools. And then we'll look at troubleshooting, what type of resources are available to you out there to assist with the license activation and software installation. And then we have some FAQs, those frequently asked questions that I'm sure all of you have run into at one point or another working with the eCognition software or the eCognition license server, license manager software. We're going to take a look at those, and we can have discussions with our support engineer who's on the line with us today. So jump right into it. Acquiring an eCognition license. Well, how do I get an eCognition license? This seems really basic. Well, yes, you can get these eCognition licenses through Trimble. We distribute the eCognition licenses here. They're sold by, in some cases, Trimble directly, or one of our regional channel partners. So you can reach out to either of those people to get that eCognition license. Use the contact sales button on our website if you're interested in getting any pricing information or would just like to speak with a sales representative. We have sales representatives and, of course, our regional channel partners all over the world who we can get you in contact with. So once you make that purchase of an eCognition license, how do we actually get it to you? Well, we no longer send boxes with CDs or dongles anymore. That's a thing of the past for eCognition. We have, we call it soft lock licenses, and these are transferred to you via the entitlement email. You'll hear this word quite frequently. It's an important email, and this is why we want to spend some time discussing it. So after you make that purchase, your order is processed, and the entitlement email is sent to you, either you directly, maybe it comes over your channel partner, whoever's managing that connection with you. The entitlement email contains all the information you'll need to download the software, to install the software, to activate your license, and of course, to manage your software. Needless to say, this is important, so don't lose it. If you somehow misplace this, you can reach out to us and we can hunt through our data bank and track your organization down. We can get the information out to you. But it's really important to have this entitlement email, so save it somewhere and don't get fidgety with the delete button. and possibly delete this. So what does this email have in it? Well, it walks you, first of all, through the steps of installation. So here are these installation and activation workflow steps. It's relatively straightforward. Kind of break it down into 4 steps. First of all, you want to download the software. There's a link in the entitlement email, which we'll see in just a minute what this email actually looks like, to our download portal, where you can navigate to the appropriate software packages and download them. Of course, you're going to want to download what we call the license server. This is essential to using the software. This is the next piece you have to install. Once you've downloaded the packages, so you probably want to maybe the license server install package, as well as an eCognition developer installation package, for example. You can start with installing the license server. This is used to host and distribute that eCognition license. When you're running this license server setup, you'll be prompted to activate your license. You can either choose to ignore this and do it later, or do it directly within the license server setup. And finally, once you've installed the license server, you've activated the license, then you can go ahead and install the client software. So that might be eCognition Developer, maybe it's our eCognition Oil Palm application. There are various packages depending on what you've purchased from us. And then you are ready to go. The client software will speak to the license server, and you can begin working with eCognition. So here is the infamous entitlement email. Don't be scared of all the numbers. We're going to explain this to you right now. Really, the most important one for you is the so-called entitlement ID. This is essentially a license key. If you have this, please keep track of it. If there are any license administrators on the line, this is a very important piece of information to have stored in whatever way you organize all the various programs that your institution may be working with. I recommend keeping the entire entitlement email, because it also has some very other important information that we're going to get to next. So the entitlement email has the entitlement ID really up at the top. An entitlement can contain more than one product, though. So as we see here, the customer, our support engineer, Sebastian Glaser, has acquired 3 different eCognition products, and we see them listed in the products acquired section of the entitlement email. And each one of these products has a unique activation ID. Again, this ID number is unique to that specific product. So we see in the first line here, he has 2 eCognition server licenses. For that eCognition server product, there's a specific activation ID. We also see here the product information. We see the product name. So you see underneath the activation ID, we see product name, eCognition server, the version 9.4. We see a license status. Is this a permanent license or a perpetual license? Is it a leased license? And we also see, in the case of a leased license, the expiration date. When will this license expire? And finally, we see the quantity. How many eCognition server licenses were acquired in this purchase? So here, 2. The next section has, of course, the eCognition developer. We also see here, again, a unique activation ID for the developer product. And then finally, we see a unique activation ID again for the eCognition Essentials product. So 3 different products, 3 unique activation IDs. We start to read down further, and we get into what we'll call a quick installation guide. And we have 2 sections. One would be for essentially an existing user who's going to upgrade their license to a newer version. Here the steps are slightly different than if you are a new user installing eCognition for the first time. For new users, you can skip down to the second section here. It says for new users, steps to install eCognition license. You can see 1, 2, 3. It's really not rocket science in this case. You also notice in those quick installation guide steps, there is a direct link to the Trimble Imaging Download Center. This is where our software packages are currently stored. And this is where we get into one of the first common mistakes that some users make, is that they click this link and they see they're prompted to enter a login name, and there is no unique login for individual users for eCognition software. Use the username and password that you find just below that link to the download center, and you can access the a version of eCognition. Okay. Finally, you will also see links in this email. If you get stuck at some point during the installation and activation process, you can link directly to our eCognition support portal and submit a ticket to one of our engineers, and they would be happy to assist you in setting up the eCognition license. Okay. Furthermore, you also see the email address of our maintenance department. So if you have questions regarding whether your organization is still under maintenance with their eCognition products, you can submit all those types of questions directly to them. So really, this eCognition entitlement email has all the information you need to get your software and then start activating it, installing it, and using it ultimately. Sebastian, are there any questions that have come in so far that we should address before moving on beyond the entitlement email?
Not at the moment. The most questions are already answered via the question box.
Okay, excellent. Remember, you can submit questions anytime during the webinar. All right, so we're going to go now. We've got our entitlement email. I want to now download my software. Like I said, the first thing we want to download is that license server installation package. So let's take a look at this. First of all, what is the eCognition license server? Now, the eCognition license server houses and distributes an eCognition license to the users. We can support the contents of multiple entitlement IDs within a single license server. So if for whatever reason, maybe you acquired products at different times and those are distributed on different entitlement IDs, you can enter multiple entitlement IDs into the license server via the activation button and add all those products into a single eCognition license server for distribution. The license server is also what I call backwards compatible. That means that you can use, for example, a eCognition version 9.4 license server to host an older version of the eCognition software. So if you have a version 9.2 license mixed into your offering, you can also host that via the 9.4 license server. That being said, if you have an eCognition 9.4 license, but for whatever reason you'd like to use an older version of the software, you can still use the 9.3 version of eCognition Developer via your 9.4 license and via a 9.4 license server. But if you have the version 9.2 license server and you would like to host the new 9.4 license, that is not possible from an old license server to host a newer license of the software. So you'll have to update your license server with what we call every major release of eCognition. After installation, the license server then morphs into what we call the eCognition License Manager. And for those of you that see in the installers or do quick searches in the computer, you can simply start to type in eCog LM for the eCognition License Manager. And this allows you to manage your licenses after the license server installation has been completed. So where can I host an eCognition license? The eCognition license server supports different distribution types. It's the same license for everybody. You can either install on a local host, so here, perfect single user environment. The license server and the client software can be installed on the same machine. Or if you're going to be distributing this license to multiple users, you can install the eCognition license server on a central license server system in a network, and then the end users simply have to install the client software and navigate to the host machine in order to draw their license. This being said, what type of platforms, operating systems do we support? Well, for a complete list of the detailed operating systems, please reference our eCognition documentation. You can go to section 1.5 of the system requirements document and get that full list. But in general, we have Microsoft Windows client and server operating systems. We can run the license server in a Linux environment or in various Linux environments. Again, please refer to the documentation for the complete list of Linux operating systems. You can host your license server on a virtual machine. And finally, you can host a license server in a cloud, for example. We have experience working with the Amazon cloud, but you can look at other cloud options for this as well. So it's quite flexible and is essentially a floating license, regardless of how you want to, how many users you have and where you host it. Any specific questions on operating systems and platforms, Sebastian, before I move on?
Not yet. So it seems everything is clear right now.
Excellent. We will continue. So we've prepared a video here to look at the license download and activation process. It doesn't have any volume to it. Also, I will talk you through this video. So first of all, we're going to look at accessing the download portal. Here's what it looks like. You simply have to enter in the username and password. The password, again, where do you get this information? It's not individual to each user. So you go back to that entitlement email. We'll open this up. And I really recommend copying and pasting directly from that entitlement email. Again, point out here you can access the portal. There are the usernames listed there. Just simple copy and paste. Make sure you get the entire password. And then you can log in to the site. Now, you see there are other Trimble software packages here. So, of course, click on the eCognition tab, go to eCognition software, and then navigate through the list. You'll see there are various versions available to you. Select the one you'd like to download, select the operating system here, so Windows or Linux, and then see the first thing we're going to click is the license server. So downloading that zip file, of course, you're going to want to extract it to run any of the setup files, and simply click that setup file, accept the license agreement, and click next and walk through this dialog. The installation does not take very long, as you'll see. And once you are installed, you are prompted to enter the entitlement ID. Again, I recommend copying and pasting directly from that entitlement email. Here you'll see, oh, here are my licenses. You have a total of, you see the grand total here for this entitlement. You can choose to install only some of them, or you can say select all, and it will automatically activate all licenses in the entitlement. You're then prompted to either restart your computer or those services before moving on. And now we see the license manager. All of those licenses have been activated successfully. The installation is now complete, and we can click finish and then move on to the next step, which is going into the installation of the software itself. So let me get back in the presentation mode here. That was the installation of the license server and license activation. So I mentioned once the license server is installed, you'll see in the shortcuts on your computer references to the eCognition license manager. Goes from license server to license manager. And here we are providing users with all the tools to manage and distribute their eCognition software. First of all, within the license manager, you have the options for activation, which we just saw in the video. You can do an online activation, which is the default, as well as an offline license activation. You can also do online and offline license returns. So once a license has been activated, it's no longer available to be activated on another machine. Well, once it's on machine 1, you can no longer put it on machine 2. If you need to rehost a license and move it from machine 1 to machine 2, then the active license must first be returned from the original host machine. Word of warning, don't just clean out the original host machine, reformat it, or whatever actions you might be taking to clean it up before you return your eCognition license. Please make sure to return your eCognition license before making any significant changes to the original host, or you'll be stuck when trying to activate your license again. So like I said, the standard license management can be done directly online. This has the advantages that a user can manage the license anytime. You can activate, return those licenses at any time. You don't have to rely on a Trimble staff person to process any type of a file. This is done on your end. That means there's no downtimes for license processing. It's done instantaneously. So we'll take a look again here at license activation. We're going to come in and here open the eCognition License Manager. It's empty. No licenses were activated upon installation of the license server. So again, it's asking for that license key. That is your entitlement ID. Copy and paste it right out of that entitlement email. Go back in, paste, and click next. And as we saw earlier, you'll be able to view the contents of this license and either manually select the products to activate, or if you have numerous entitlements, especially for those university users out there, may not want to click 40 times on the dialog. You can simply click select all, and all the products within your entitlement will be activated. So we'll get back into the presentation here. Oops, jumped ahead again. Now let's look at the topic of license return. This is you want to move these licenses to a new machine. Maybe you're going to be updating the machine, maybe doing some formatting, maybe it's purely getting it to a different user. You can simply click on return, select the product that you want to return, or select all, click return, and those licenses will be removed from the license manager and now will be available for activation on a new machine. Oops, I keep on jumping ahead. I apologize here. The next topic we want to look at is the license administration console. Apologize here. And once your licenses are activated, you can get additional information on the state of the organization's licenses via the license admin console. This is available via the URL here, so you can see this local host 8090, and you can enter this in. And at this point, I'd just like to hand over to our support engineer, Sebastian Glaser, and maybe he can clarify the tools available in this license admin console for you, and answer some questions that you may have. Sebastian, the floor is yours.
Okay, so actually what you can do here is to see an overview of your activated licenses. You can see each product, here for example the developer, the server, and the essentials, as well as the oops, can we go back for a moment, the can also see the corresponding activation ID of each product and also the quantity of the software activated. You can hop until to the end, yeah. Also, we can see an expiration date or not when it's permanent. Yeah, that's all you can do. And also, you have the option to switch here to the administration console. This is the dashboard, but this is another task where you can enter TCP ports and make further license server configurations. So no questions.
One question I've seen in the past, Sebastian, is there a way to see if a product is in use via this the dashboard?
Correct. When you click here on the fulfillments link, you are able to see which client in your network has the license checked out. And so you can a little bit monitor who is using the license at the moment. Unfortunately, you cannot see it in this video, but this is an option. Okay.
So that's a great tool to use, particularly if you have numerous users accessing, say, a limited number of eCognition licenses. Occasionally, someone might come in and say, I can't get a license, and here you can access this control console and see whether the licenses are in use by someone else in your organization, and then you can go discuss on who should stop using it in order so that you can acquire the license. So we mentioned offline activation and returns earlier. It is possible if you are working in, say, a restricted environment with limited or no internet connection possibilities, you can still activate eCognition licenses here. This means that you have to process an offline activation request. And please note, because you will be working in an offline environment, you'll have to generate this request. You will send it to our team, and that may lead to some downtimes because we have to process that manually on our side and give you the corresponding files back so you can activate the software offline. In order to activate the software offline, this is where the activation ID for each individual product is important. So we'll take a look at the offline activation video here and walk you through the steps that are needed. Again, you're going to want to access the license manager. So you open that up, and if you're going to activate offline, just simply click activate here. Do not enter your entitlement ID. Here you want to click that little triangle and say generate offline request. This will prompt the field here. You want to then click add product, and this is where you then go into your entitlement email again and now copy and paste that activation ID. So the activation ID is required for the offline activation. If there are more than one products, you can again toggle how many of these you would like to activate via this request. You can also add multiple products, so you don't have to generate one offline request per product. You can add the full contents of your entitlement to this and then just send the one file to the eCognition team for offline activation. We'll add the final product here. And once that is set, you click OK. It's going to ask you, where do I want to save this activation request XML file? So you'll have to save this somewhere, and then you will have to somehow get it off the restricted computer and send it via email to our eCognition license team, and they will process the for you. Once you then get the response file back from the license team, you will want to bring this back into your eCognition license manager and simply say process offline response. And voila, we have then our files activated that were in the offline request pieces here. Just make sure you may want to restart your license services here. So you can go into the services panel, just click restart. And this will essentially mimic restarting the computer. And then you can go in and take a look here again at our console, and we see that the products have been activated.
There was a question about the administration console, because you have to enter a specific username and password. If there's the same password out of the entitlement email, it's not. The password for the admin console and the dashboard is per default admin, as well as the username admin, but you will get asked to change the password after the first logon.
Excellent. So keep that in mind if license administrators, admin for if you want to get into that console. The offline return works in a very similar way as the activation. And we'll take a look at the video we've prepared, opening that license manager. You're going to return your licenses, only this time we will click offline operations. We'll select, first of all, select the products you want to return, offline operations, generate offline request. Again, it's going to create an XML file that you will then send to the eCognition team. They will provide you with a response file once it has been processed. Again, keep in mind the downtimes, and then you will take the response file and read that into the license manager, as we're going to see here. So again, click again on return once you receive that response file, and then process offline response, and then just navigate to where that XML file is, and this will complete the return process. And this you may want to do for several products if this is showing if you had them for several different products. And then you can close the license manager and the return has been completed. And again, once those licenses have been returned, this will now allow you to go to another host machine and activate them there. Once the eCognition licenses have been activated, you can then install the client software, and we prepared a video in advance of the installation here. I will go back to the beginning and we can take a look. So in this case, again, you're going to go into the download portal to access that client software. And remember to click the eCognition tab, go to eCognition software, and then select a version. In this case, we're looking to a product from eCognition Suite 9.4. We're going to download that developer zip file. Should go rather quickly. You'll then extract the contents. And once it has been extracted, we can then go in and find that setup file. There it is. We'll run this. and also does not take too much time. Simply walk through the dialog, accepting the license agreement. And now you'll have to select whether you want to install this on a local host or a network machine. So in this case, we're going to choose a local host. It's looking for the license server. And then you have options here, what you want to install. You can choose to also install the SDK. If you're going to be working with any of the deep learning tools, you can choose the NVIDIA package there. And you also saw that the license borrowing package was selected by default. And that's now been installed. You will then see that the software is available in the menu. We can then open our eCognition developer and make sure that everything is running smoothly. As you can see, this license expires in 4 days. And here we are. eCognition developer is open and running. Any questions, Sebastian, regarding the installation of the client software?
Nope. No question.
One thing to keep in mind is if you choose to also install the SDK packages, this could mean that the installer will run a little bit longer, but don't get worried. It's because it's having to install several other packages with this. So, mentioned briefly in the last section, when installing the software, you are by default prompted to install the eCognition license borrowing tool. If you're not interested in the license borrowing tool, you can simply uncheck that box during the client software installation, and this tool will not be installed. If you want it, then just leave the box checked. But let's see, what is the license borrowing tool? Well, this will allow a user to borrow a license for up to 30 days from the license server. And that means that you can borrow it without having to install an eCognition license server on the borrowing machine. It is a pretty good option for people that may be taking a computer out into the field or out of the office for a few days or longer to get that license out and still use it. Licenses that are borrowed, they will be returned automatically after the defined checkout period is completed. Okay, so longest period is a maximum of 30 days, and then the license automatically be returned and become available in the original host environment. If you find yourself completing your eCognition work earlier than expected, you can also return that license earlier. And here we'll take a look at what this borrowing looks like. We're going to open now the eCognition license borrowing tool. So not the eCognition license manager, the eCognition license borrowing tool. And we want to type in, we're going to borrow a license from one of our server machines in the office. Here we're typing in the name of the host machine. And we're simply going to click refresh, and then we'll get a complete listing of all the eCognition licenses available on this host machine. Wonderful, quite a few. And we can select a license to borrow. So just coming down the list, we'll take maybe a developer license here and take one of the new ones, developer 9.4. We want to borrow the license, and you'll see the borrowed licenses goes into then the borrowed section here, and you'll just define now the end date so that how long you want to borrow this product for. And now we will check where we're on another, going in remote desktop to another machine. We're going to open this up, and eCognition will now run on this machine without having the license manager. So see, there's the machine we're on versus the machine we borrowed from. And again, like I said, if you want to then return the license early, then you simply click the return button, and that will go back into the pool of licenses in the machine. Right. Any questions regarding license borrowing from the audience? Yep.
Nope, nothing.
All right, excellent. Then we'll continue. So troubleshooting, what type of resources are available out there if you get stuck at some point during the installation activation process? First of all, you can go to the eCognition Help Center. This is available from the eCognition support portal, and there are a number of good documents here that can walk you through some of the frequently asked questions during installation, and with the needed documentation to answer your question. You can also contact eCognition support, and we would be glad to help you. You can also reference the help information and documentation that we provide. We have installation guides. They are available online. If you have the software open, already installed, and you're wondering how to do a return, for example, you can go in and open the help section directly online via the software. Or if you haven't installed the software yet, all the different installation guides are provided with those packages that you downloaded from the from the download center, and they're also available as PDF, so you can open them before running the installer or any of those setups. And you can also write into the eCognition community and see if there are any other people out there that maybe have similar problems, or you can look up in all the different discussions that are within the community. Now, we've put together a number of frequently asked questions that we see in support quite often. The first one is going to be, the vendor daemon is down. What does this error mean? Well, the license server service simply cannot start the vendor daemon. This is most likely caused by any firewall issues or any firewall restrictions that your organization may have, or port conflicts with other FlexNet-based software packages. And correct me, Sebastian, if I'm wrong, but this is one of the FAQs that you'll get answers to in that help center via the support portal.
That's correct, yeah. You can get some information on how to solve this issue on the support portal.
Right. Anything else you'd like to add from a support perspective on the vendor daemon issue?
No, you can. I think the technical side is very well described on the support portal, so nothing to add here, I think, at the moment.
Great. And one thing is to just consider those other FlexNet-based softwares. Off the top of my head, I believe Esri products and maybe some Envy or ADAS products, I can't remember, also are FlexNet-based. And if you're hosting them in the same environment as eCognition, this can lead to some conflict. So go to this documentation and you'll get answers. Next one, the license server service is not started in Windows Services menu. What to do here? Well, again, this is also something that can cause your vendor daemon error. So you can go into those services that we saw in the video, restart that, and then you'll be good. Where is the so-called license file? Well, with eCognition 9, we no longer provide a physical license file. So don't worry if you're not getting a physical license file delivered to you via a CD or a dongle or something. Again, those don't pertain to eCognition 9 family, so it's not something to get worried about. What TCP ports are being used? This is one that's also comes in frequently. By default, the license server is going to use TCP 27000. But you can change ports if you want to get into those port changes. I would recommend contacting our eCognition support engineers, and they can walk you through how you can make some of these port changes if you get stuck. Also, vendor daemon TCP ports, this is then a random port. Next part of this is, when do I need to return a license? Well, if you're going to do any type of major changes to the license server host machine, for example, physical or virtual hardware changes, maybe moving the virtual host somewhere else or reformatting, this would require you to first return your eCognition license before going through with any type of these maintenance activities, so that you can immediately activate the license once your activities have been completed. Also, if you simply just want to swap a license to another host system, the so-called rehost, again, this would require you to return your license before you can then activate it on the new machine. Firewall configurations. What do we need to know about these? You can add exceptions for various ports, and you can also add exceptions for programs. And Sebastian, do you have anything else to add? You're really the firewall expert here on these issues. Any tips from yours?
No, most likely you're good. Make an exception for the TCP ports or the corresponding programs eCognition is using. So nothing else to add.
Okay. So another common one happens, you've installed the software, you've got your license activated, installed maybe eCognition developer, you open up and this so-called syntax error in configuration file error pops up. This is one that worries people sometimes. Don't worry, this simply means that you need to make sure that the eCognition configuration file, that the CFG file, here's the root folder for this. Again, the version 9.x, that will depend on what version of eCognition you're using. This requires that you have not only read but also write access. So if we're going to be writing out any results, doing any type of exports, we need to have write access to those locations. So make sure that this file has those rights when you're setting up the software. And if you're looking for instructions on that, again, you can go into that eCognition Help Center. There are links to documentation on how to configure that file. Right. What information should I include when contacting support? So let's say you've tried to read through all the documentation, you're reading through the FAQ section, and you just can't wrap your head around what a certain problem is that's preventing an activation or the client software from starting. Well, then of course, please reach out to the eCognition support engineers before you get too far. Like I said, we're always happy to assist. And when I submit a support ticket, always include your entitlement ID, because this allows our support engineers to quickly identify your license. We can look up on our end the license status. Has it been activated? Has it not yet been activated? How far has it gone through certain steps? And we can start to help you faster. Also provide a detailed description of the problem. So don't just write in and say, hey, I can't activate eCognition developer. Get into some details, provide information on where you are in the installation process, maybe what type of environment you're looking to activate your license in, things of that nature. And of course, If possible and if relevant, you can also send us screenshots of various error messages or dialogues that you're seeing during the installation process or when working with the software as well, and we can help you faster this way. So that being said, before we wrap things up, are there any questions now from the audience? This is your chance to interact with not only myself, the eCognition product management, but also we have our support engineers here on the line. So are there any questions out there that that you haven't had answered yet that you would like us to answer here today?
So we have one question there. There's somebody asking if it's necessary, or is it still necessary to have TCP 8888 still open on the firewall to activate the license? So I can answer that if you like, Keith.
Sure, yeah.
So we made with 9.4 some changes, so actually it should be possible to use the common internet ports, which is 80 or 8080 to activate the license. So no longer necessary to have 8888 open on your firewall, but make sure you have you use the latest license server build. This is one question.
Excellent.
There's another one. Maybe this can you answer. Somebody's asking, I have a client that has one license for eCognition developer and 2 licenses of eCognition server. Where should I put the server license? On each one of these servers?
So there's the customer has a developer and 2 individual server licenses. Here, the eCognition server is quite flexible, and it can also have to do with the quality of the machines that you have available to you. For example, my personal setup with eCognition, I have 1 developer and 4 server licenses, and I host everything via localhost on my my personal work computer. Because that machine is strong enough, has enough cores to run 4 server licenses individually. That's what we call a local server setup. In addition, if you don't want to utilize a local server, you'd like to set up the server license on an external machine. This is what we call establishing a server grid. This has an advantage that you will not experience any type of lag times, processing lag times on your local machine, so where you have developers installed. So you can set those up on a separate machine. That could be a separate physical machine. It could also be a virtual machine. In addition, you can also host your eCognition server license in the cloud. So we've done a number of internal experimenting with large jobs where we've just put a whole bunch of eCognition server licenses into an Amazon cloud environment, and we send our jobs to process in the cloud. So here it will depend on what the customer's preference is. Setting up a server grid can be more complex than just simply using a local server. If the customer has any questions about that setup, then again, please reach out to our eCognition support engineers, and we can help you with the setup of the eCognition server grid. So.
Okay, maybe one last question. If we perform a software update, does it have any additional costs?
A software update. If your organization is currently covered by an active maintenance contract, you will receive eCognition updates, notifications, and for not only for what we call maintenance releases or the software patches, but also for major releases, and that is included in the maintenance contract. If you find yourself outside of maintenance for whatever reason, and you'd like to update, say, from eCognition 9.2 or 9.3 to our latest version, eCognition 9.4, in order to update your software, you have to reestablish your maintenance contract with us, and you should contact our maintenance team. Again, if you're missing that information, it's in the initial entitlement email, that the address for the maintenance team, and say, hey, I'd like to be able to update to the latest version with all the new bells and whistles that we have. Please provide me with a quote for the maintenance renewal, and they will work with you to get that. Let's see, I see another question came in here, an interesting one. Do you think you will ever offer server as a SaaS pay-per-use model? Excellent question. It's one that's been batted around the hallways of our eCognition office in Greater Trimble, for that matter, for a while. And it's something we're looking into, but we're not quite there yet with this current version of eCognition. But we're having extensive discussions on SaaS licensing, cloud computing possibilities. So this is something that goes beyond just eCognition. It's a Trimble topic, and we are involved in these discussions with these teams. So keep your eye on maybe these potential licensing setups in the future, and we might be able to get that for you. See, try and field a few more questions that I see in the list here. It says you give entitlement and license separately. The entitlement ID is your license key. So the entitlement ID, or this entitlement email, is in a sense your license. Like we said in the presentation, we no longer provide a physical license file, so you're not going to get a CD or a little USB dongle with that physical license file on there. There's nothing that you have to physically download from somewhere. It all runs through the eCognition license server. You enter that entitlement ID, and that entitlement ID contains the licensed products that your organization purchased. Here I see another one. If I have an active maintenance contract and want to perform a major update 9.3 to 9.4, we sort of went through this. Does it require a new entitlement ID? No. If your software, if you're updating from a major version to, or any version, whether it's a major release to or a maintenance release, your entitlement ID will stay the same for the lifespan of your product. The only thing that changes from version to version is the activation ID. So keep in mind when you get the new entitlement email for going from 9.3 to 9.4, if you're working in offline environments, that's where you're going to want to pay attention. The activation ID will change because you're getting a new product. You're going from a product 9.3, say, to a product 9.4. So the activation IDs will change. Your entitlement ID, though, will stay the same throughout the life of your license. And let's see, a couple more minutes here that we can see if we have any more questions here. There's some very specific questions on how to extract certain information from eCognition. The specific question was whether we can extract slope data from digital elevation model. This doesn't pertain to any of the licenses, but I'll just grab it. Yes, you can calculate slope and aspect directly from your elevation models within eCognition. Remember, eCognition developer must be installed and licensed in order to do that. So I hope you have enjoyed this webinar. Like I said, it's maybe not the most exciting topic, but it's an essential topic. And we would like to say thank you for attending, and please stay tuned for any future webinars in the month to come. I can tell you March will have a very exciting topic. We're going to be looking at the topic of T dimensions and tools for working in various time-lapse photography within eCognition. So we'll make that webinar announcement soon, and you'll be able to register. If you have any questions that come up after this webinar, please let us know. You can write to support@ecognition.com and we will get back to you as soon as we can. That being said, again, thank you for attending. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and have a good evening, a good rest of your day, and hope to see you in our webinar sessions in the future. Thank you.